This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Africa CDC warns of an increase in cases of the deadly Delta coronavirus variant in African countries. Uganda rolls out distribution
in part due to challenges affecting
coronavirus variant, which was originally identified in India. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control, Malawi and Senegal are the latest to confirm Delta variant cases. There are now 15 countries which have reported presence of the Delta variant. In the meantime, Africa as a whole has reported over 254,000 new cases of COVID-19 in the past 2 weeks. Reporting from Addis Ababa, here's CGTN's Koleta Wanjohi.
Over 5,000 people have reportedly died from COVID-19 in just 2 weeks across Africa. South Africa, Tunisia, Zambia, Namibia and Zimbabwe are now recording the highest numbers of COVID-19 infections on the continent. The Africa CDC says the new Delta variant is the main reason for these rising cases.
Regardless of these variants, the public health measures that we know work against all these variants. Okay, that is gathering, mass gathering, wearing of masks, washing of hands, and avoiding large clustering indoor. They all work against these variants, I mean, for sure. So in other words, we don't have evidence that these variants maybe transmit through other means, like through the skin or the eyes or the ears. No, they don't do that. So we just have to keep implementing those public health measures.
The Africa CDC has welcomed an announcement by the United Kingdom to support genomic sequencing in Africa. Kenya, Nigeria and Ethiopia will be the first to benefit. Dr. Nkengason says this will boost existing capacity and allow for further local research on the virus.
We stand here as Africa CDC ready to coordinate with everybody, because the importance of pathogen genomics is not just doing the analysis, but is doing that quickly and sharing the information, not just within the country, but across the continent through the networks that we have established.
The Africa CDC is also concerned about the low vaccination rate in Africa. So far, the continent of over 1.3 billion people has received only 70.4 million doses of vaccines. More vaccines are expected in the continent this month, some from the donation promised by the United States and more from purchases made by member states from Johnson & Johnson through the Afrexim Bank. The Africa CDC says 23 African countries have already experienced a third wave of the pandemic. Tunisia is experiencing its fourth. More are expected to follow. Koleta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The Ugandan government has begun distributing COVID relief money to people affected by the second lockdown. About 500,000 people living in urban areas are to benefit from the almost $15 million set aside for the exercise. The money will be distributed through mobile money services, with each beneficiary expected to receive at least $29. Beneficiaries without mobile phones or whose phone details are not up to date will receive the money from a local bank. The beneficiaries will include slum dwellers, food vendors, waiters, and anyone else who is not on payroll. Many of these people are unable to work because of the current lockdown restrictions. Let's get more details on that story now. CGTN's Leon Sinyanga joins us from Kampala. Good to see you, Leon. Well, the government has begun distributing COVID relief money to people affected by the second lockdown. How is this going so far, Leon?
Well, it was very amazing scenes here in the capital, Kampala, as the Prime Minister of Uganda made that phone call to the first recipient, a gentleman in northern Uganda, the Gulu district to be specific. He is a motorbike taxi rider, and that's what he said. Then he also drives taxis, commuter taxis in Gulu town. Now, the celebrations of the government officials there said a lot about being able to achieve this particular opportunity to distribute the money. It had been a long wait for several of the people that are supposed to benefit from it. It had also been just as much a tough task by the government officials to try and select who the specific people to benefit from this particular relief, regardless of the fact that they had highlighted the category of people. So yes, day one today, the specifics on how many people have exactly benefited from it, we are yet to know, but at least it is a start after what has seemingly been a very, very long wait for that amount of money.
Leon, so we've heard a little bit about who is eligible to receive this money, but what criteria is the government using to identify those who are to receive the relief? And also just speak to us about the timelines that have been set for how long this financial support exercise should take.
Well, being a vulnerable person has been the big question for many of the Ugandans. Many I probably will say are vulnerable now since they're out of work under a 42-day lockdown. But government decided to set out 13 categories. Some of these included people that worked in the slum areas, saloonists, waiters and waitresses, a few other taxi drivers and motorbike taxi riders, orphans as well. So the category has been quite a huge one. Now, government says that approximately 500,000 people will benefit from this particular relief. How much further and how exact that particular number will be able to benefit has started. We're only looking forward to seeing what exactly will happen thereafter. Now, of course, the categories are for people within particular urban centers, the capital Kampala, the northern districts of Gulu, and cities and municipalities that the government had selected. So it's definitely been some piece of work. The timelines under which this process and when everybody will be able to receive this relief money, of course, is not yet fully determined, as there's still a lot of work going on in the background to determine who exactly and when exactly they should be able to get the money. Then, of course, the challenges of technology, since many are receiving the money through mobile money transfers. Then also those who don't have telephone numbers to access the amount of money should be able to get the money in their banks. Now, that has been only one specific bank has been provided. Creating accounts for that and, you know, all the documentation is a process. So like I said, there's still some piece of work to do, and this probably will go on until when the lockdown for which this relief was intended comes to an end, and that should be at the end of this month. Thanks,
Leon Sinyanga, speaking to us from Kampala, Uganda. Well, let's stay in Uganda, which has announced that it is constructing a vaccine factory in Matuga outside the capital, Kampala. The $500 million vaccine plant will be run by local pharmaceutical company Day Group in partnership with the University of Illinois in the U.S. The facility is to be used to produce doses of COVID-19 vaccines. With the details, here is Isabel Nakiria.
Uganda will soon be able to manufacture its own vaccines. President Yoweri Museveni said the vaccine plant will be up and running in less than a year. Equipment will be shipped from the United States to facilitate the production of vaccines such as Pfizer's and Moderna's. The Ugandan leader says Africa has been too reliant on donations from developed nations.
This is sleeping. Africans sleep a lot. The problem here is people sleep. It's sleeping. It's not lack of anything because Africa has got everything.
President Museveni has recently been quoted as saying the country will soon develop its own superior COVID-19 vaccines. He has called the West selfish for failing to ensure vaccine equity. Uganda could be among the first African countries to start producing COVID-19 vaccines. It would join South Africa, that is setting up a COVID manufacturing hub and could produce vaccines in 12 months.
Great.
Attending the launch of the plant's construction, Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto said East African nations would support Uganda in the venture.
The language you are speaking of billions of dollars, we are domesticating it in our continent. It is new, but we have champions like you who are daring to walk the journey to invest in this space and in the magnitude that we have witnessed.
Shipments of vaccines to African countries have been slow, allowing COVID-19 cases to spread. In Uganda, hospitals have been overwhelmed with the rising number of patients, leading to a shortage of oxygen and ICU beds. The National Planning Authority says the country should have done better to equip hospitals.
As planners, we should have done a better job. We should have had more oxygen. We should have had more ICUs. The president told us to have 42 beds. We never delivered them. We are still talking of bringing ambulances 1 year later.
Uganda has so far vaccinated just 0.1% of its population due to a limited supply of vaccines. The country has received slightly over 1 million doses through the Global Vaccine Sharing Facility COVAX. More vaccine donations are expected in the coming months from the US, Russia and Cuba. Uganda expects to stop importing doses once it begins producing doses locally. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Tanzanian health authorities are urging schools and educational facilities to strictly follow revised COVID-19 guidelines as they reopen. The guidelines cover the preparations ahead of the resumption of learning, health exams, public transport to institutions, and learning environments. CGTN's Daniel Kidra has more details.
Tanzania has taken its fight against the COVID-19 virus to another level. After asking the general public to wear masks and sanitize, public and private schools, as well as higher learning institutions, have been instructed to adhere to strict anti-COVID-19 protocols. A decision to revise the guidelines came following a rapid increase in the number of COVID-19 infections globally. Students like Amani Kilonzo feel the inconvenience is worth it.
Our school is doing our best to make sure that nobody gets COVID-19. So we need to wear a mask and follow all procedures. For example, once we get in the bus, we always put sanitizer and we should always go to school with a mask. And once we get to school, we should always wash our hands.
The rules require all educational institutions to install hand washing facilities. Students and teachers will also get special training on how to stop the spread of the virus, and strict social distancing will be properly implemented.
If you had left all the COVID-19 protocols behind, now we request that all protocols be revived. Hand washing centres and the like have to be put up in schools.
President Samia Suluhu Hassan had warned the public that the third wave of the pandemic has already swept across the country. She says more than 100 COVID-19 patients were admitted to hospitals. The government revealed that reports from border regions indicated that the situation is alarming. After a year filled with anxiety and uncertainty, these guidelines could offer a more clear roadmap on how the education sector can handle schooling amid COVID-19. It's hoped that the measures and availability of a vaccine could help the spread of the coronavirus and help teachers and students return to a normal school environment. Students and universities with large numbers of students have been instructed to adopt a shift system. School managers say wearing masks at all times can be challenging for younger students.
It's not easy for the kids to put on the mask the whole day. So sometimes they can wear it, and sometimes when they are very free playing, they can just take it off. But the only thing we do is to tell them to at least not be together much, to be near, so that they can avoid this touching and whatever.
Tanzania has joined the COVAX facility that helps low-income countries to get subsidized COVID-19 vaccines. The country is expected to receive its COVID-19 vaccine doses between December 2021 and January 2022. But in the meantime, The government says it has begun steps to build a local factory that will be used to produce its own COVID-19 vaccines in a bid to save costs and protect its people. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Police in the Democratic Republic of Congo have arrested a leader of a militia group in the east of the country. Kambale Kambamba was arrested in the city of Oicha on Wednesday. Fighters of his Mai Mai militia are accused of carrying out deadly attacks in eastern DRC. CGTN's Christian Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Congolese police officers arrested Kambale Kabamba and 6 of his fighters in Oicha, the capital of the Eastern Territory of Beni. Their militia, the Mai Mai Movement of Combatants for the Liberation of Congo, is accused of causing insecurity in the region. The DRC's North Kivu province, which borders Uganda and Rwanda, has long been a hotbed of violence. In May, the government put the region under military rule in an effort to stop the killing of civilians. But violence has continued despite offensives from the army. According to the UN, more than 120 militias and armed groups are currently operating in eastern DRC. The area is rich in mineral resources. Officials say the illegal exploitation of minerals has fueled conflict there for over 2 decades. Congolese authorities say the arrested militia leader and his fighters will be handed over to the military tribunal for trial. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
China's foreign minister is calling for better relations with the European Union. Wang Yi spoke via video with the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, saying disputes with the bloc should be handled properly and that mutual trust needs to deepen. Wang says China does not export its ideology or model of development and expressed regret over European sanctions on Chinese individuals and entities over allegations with Xinjiang. Borrell said that their differences should not prevent contact between the two sides. Both said that despite disagreements, there was room for more cooperation on the environment, finance, sport, and the pandemic.
China and the EU have a comprehensive strategic partnership, and we are two independent forces in the world. So we believe China and the EU have a responsibility to maintain dialogue and cooperation in our relations. We also have an obligation to adhere to mutual benefit. We are more confident that we can jointly contribute to addressing global challenges.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return. More news, including thousands of internally displaced people return to Niger's Difa region. And President Muhammadu Buhari praises Nigeria's security agencies for arresting secessionist leader.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Thousands of internally displaced people from Niger have begun returning to their homes in the Difa region in the eastern part of the country. Many fled their homes 6 years ago due to attacks by militant group Boko Haram. The repatriation operation is being carried out under the supervision of the country's authorities and army. Noktula Shabalala has that story.
The repatriation operation began on the 20th of June. So far, 5,935 people have returned to their village of Barawa in the Difa region.
The operation to repatriate internally displaced persons from Difa region involves some 260,000 people from 300 villages. But security remains the key to the success of this operation. Aware of this challenge, the head of state, Mohamed Bazoum, went to the region to reassure the population and the local authorities so that they could go about their business.
In 2015, there was an increase in attacks by Nigerian militant group Boko Haram. Many fled to save their lives. But now they face new challenges back in their village. They have to rebuild houses, schools, and health centers, which were ruined during the violence. The people of Barawa are demanding more aid and security from authorities to help them resettle.
Our objective in bringing the people back is to allow them to engage in economic activities. The terrorists are not within the village. Agricultural activities and the lake where people go fishing are not located in the village either. Our duty is to make sure that the lake can be used, that there are no terrorism threats in the area. The realities of the village of Barawa are the same for all other villages. We will therefore take all security measures at all levels.
More than 200 villages have been targeted by this voluntary repatriation operation. It has raised many hopes among the population.
The president made an outstanding commitment and has kept it. The women and girls of Barua are very grateful to the president. It is a really great honor for us, the girls and women of Barua, because we are always the victims of certain unpleasant situations. We really thank the President of the Republic for having taken such a commitment and for having respected it with honor.
Authorities are distributing food and tents to the displaced, and an ambulance has been made available to the village. Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has praised the country's security agencies for the recent arrest of some secessionist leaders in the country. The government says the leaders have been responsible for some of the security challenges in Nigeria. Correspondent Phil Ihaza reports from Abuja.
President Buhari says the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the outlawed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, last month, was welcome and will help in maintaining law and order in the southeastern part of the country. The government accuses the secessionist leader of inciting violence, which has led to hundreds of deaths during attacks targeting government assets and law enforcement agents. The group has repeatedly denied these allegations, claiming that their region is marginalized and they want to break away to form their own state called Biafra. Last week, the Attorney General of Nigeria, Abubakar Malami, says the IPOB leader who has been on the run outside the country was arrested through the collaborative efforts of Nigerian intelligence agents and Interpol. He did not state where Nnamdi Kanu was picked up from. Similarly, the president has applauded security agencies for raiding the residence of another youth leader of the Yoruba tribe in southwest Nigeria known as Sunday Igboho. He's been accused of calling for a breakaway of the Yoruba tribe and conducting acts of terror under the guise of protecting his kinsmen. The youth leader escaped arrest, but according to the government, a pile of weapons was found in his residence in Oyo State and a manhunt has been launched to find him. Both the southern and northern parts of the country have been dealing with attacks from unknown gunmen. On Wednesday, militants killed 18 people when they attacked a village in northeast Nigeria. President Buhari has directed security agencies to intensify their efforts and find the perpetrators of these attacks while ensuring that peace is restored to all the troubled areas. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
The World Political Parties Summit, which was held virtually, was attended by many politicians from across the globe. In Cote d'Ivoire, the event was followed live and discussed at the country's ruling party headquarters in the presence of several party officials and the Chinese ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire. CGTN's Enoch Sequoia reports.
The Communist Party of China has shown many years of proven experience in fighting poverty. Leaders in Cote d'Ivoire attended the World Political Party Summit with the aim of borrowing a leaf from the respected CPC party, which has just marked its 100th anniversary.
We thank China for allowing us to experience this unforgettable moment. The RHDP could not be absent at this event because President Alassane Ouattara and President Xi Jinping work for the well-being of their respective people in a global context. They do it so that the people live together in brotherhood. We are perfectly in line with this vision of China and of all the states that work every day for the well-being of their people. We will continue to work with China on this win-win cooperation.
qui œuvrent chaque jour au bien-être de leur peuple.
Des changements complexes et profonds.
The whole world is undergoing complex and profound changes. All people are facing major challenges such as climate change and the COVID-19 crisis. It is therefore necessary to strengthen and unite the efforts of all forces to overcome these challenges. That's why China's decided to hold this summit. We are very pleased to see that during this summit, the leaders of the world's political parties have succeeded in promoting peace, development, equity, health, and security of the people.
According to RHDP party, Côte d'Ivoire has decided to take inspiration from the Chinese economic development model for the well-being of its population and to fight poverty in the country.
The President of the Republic, Alassane Ouattara, has proposed a new way of life for Ivorians by 2025. This new way of life is based on the theme, the Ivory Coast in Solidarity, because it is in solidarity that China has managed to develop and eradicate poverty. Through this theme, we want to bring Ivorians to cultivate values that will allow them to take their destiny in hand and work for their own development. This will be done under the supervision of the state and under the leadership of the RHDP.
The Communist Party of China has put in years of hard work to reduce poverty in China. Many leaders across the continent are hopeful that someday soon they will reach China's level through CPC's mentorship. Enoxi, CGTN.
The COVID-19 pandemic has forced people around the world to observe prevention measures imposed by governments, among them wearing masks. However, very little has been done to make sure that individuals with hearing and speech impairments are catered for. In a bid to tackle this challenge in Zimbabwe, the Sunrise Sign Language Academy has been distributing reusable transparent masks. It has so far distributed over 5,000 reusable transparent face masks around the country.
As someone who uses sign language to communicate, your face is an important aspect of your communication. So if I'm trying to communicate with you, there are other, signs that need to show my face when I speak. So when I have a mask, I need to have something transparent to show my lips so that you can understand really what I'm trying to say. And also, there are other deaf people who use basically lip reading more than signing. So they need to see my lips, and I also need to see their lips so that we can communicate.
Many of the disposable surgical masks, they're now becoming an eyesore to many people. And I think with the introduction of the transparent ones, I feel, number one, it's reusable, it's saving money. Number two, we're protecting the environment. Number three, we're fostering access to communication.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more news, but for now, let's take a look at what's happening in the world of business with Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. Nigeria's power generation capacity falls by 3 gigawatts, partly because of challenges affecting its transmission network. And another week and another massive diamond unearthed in Botswana. We'll have the details next.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Let's start in West Africa. Power generation companies in Nigeria say that the available generation capacity in Africa's largest oil producer has fallen to just 6 gigawatts from 9 gigawatts, which was available last year. The Association of Power Generation Firms made that announcement during a panel session at the Nigeria Oil and Gas Conference in Abuja. Now, the group says that gas supply constraints are the main reason for the decline in available power generation capacity. And they're arguing that if this could be solved, if the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC as it's more commonly known, agrees to supply at least 60% of the gas needed by power firms. And that, they say, would enable the sector to achieve its goal of raising the installed generation capacity to 30 gigawatts by 2030, with 3 gigawatts coming in from renewables and 27 gigawatts coming in from conventional power plants. On to the business of carbon, but not the usual kind of carbon. The Canadian diamond company Lucara has unearthed an exceptionally large and white 1,174 carat diamond in Botswana. Now, in case you're keeping track, you'll know this is larger than the previous large find in the same country. Just last month, Botswana found a 1,098 carat stone in the country. The latest find effectively solidifies Botswana's position as a global leader for the finding of large diamonds. 6 of the stones in the top 10 list were found in the South African nation. South Africa's property market is showing signs of slowing down after a slight uptick in the second half of 2020. The latest edition of the FNB Property Barometer shows price growth in the sector slowed down in June, but the market remains pretty resilient for the time being. According to that particular report, annual growth in South African house prices decelerated in June to just 3.7% from 4.2% in May. That makes the housing market, alongside mining, as one of the few sectors that has rebounded above pre-pandemic levels. Households with the means to do so have also been able to take advantage of the 300 basis point cut that the central bank has made to policy rates last year. Back into Nigeria, the country has announced plans to start constructing a $1.2 billion rail line linking the northern cities of Kano and Kaduna. The country's Transportation Minister, Rotimi Amaechi, says that construction will start this month. As CGTN's Deji Badmus now reports, Africa's largest economy aims to link the main towns of its 36 states to the nation's capital by rail.
This is the new addition to Nigeria's ambitious railway project, the Lagos-Ibadan 156-kilometer standard gauge railway. It's a segment of the 2,733 kilometers Lagos-Kano railway project, which will connect Nigeria's commercial capital with other parts of the country. The Kano-Kaduna Railway, which is now scheduled for construction, is also another segment of that project.
All the necessary contracts have been awarded. We've been waiting for the loan for too long now from China, and the money has not come. So we decided to fund it from the budget. We've already paid about $218 million to them, and we're about to pay them another $100 million. So that will be about $318 million. Kano-Kaduna is about $1.2 billion. The moment you pay about $318 million, you must have paid that 1/3 of the project. So we believe that by the time we get the loan, we should, from the budget, have funded up to $600 million, between $500 and $600 million. So that should be able to take the project nearly halfway.
China has been playing a very crucial role in Nigeria's railway revitalization, providing both concessionary loans and the technical expertise to execute the projects. Chinese engineering firms are also the ones handling the Lagos-Kano rail project.
They have been cooperating, they are playing their role, and the arrangement is government to government. The beauty of it is that our government is also trying by not waiting and providing their counterpart funding. The money we are getting from China, it's not that it's being given to Nigerian government. They pay for the work done by the contractor. When we certify, or the consultants say they have done this, we also look at it that they have done it. Then the Exim Bank have a consultant who also come to cross-check that what they said they have done is correct, and they pay them.
Beyond facilitating the movement of people, the Nigerian government is hoping to drive commercial activities by linking the north of the country to the south through rail. Many believe that will open up every part of the country and bring about more development. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Let's head up north. Egypt's central bank says the tourism revenues in the first 9 months of the 2020-2021 fiscal year fell by over 2/3 to around $3.1 billion. Now, tourism, of course, is a key source of hard currency earnings for the North African state. The sector lost over $7.7 billion due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. From Cairo, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The data from the Apex Bank reflects the dire situation of the tourism industry, which has been battered by the coronavirus pandemic. In a bid to keep the tourism sector afloat, Egypt's central bank has extended its multi-billion-dollar emergency fund to the vital economic sector.
There are two initiatives. The first is funding tourism establishments to be able to pay salaries and avoid firing any employees. This initiative is led by the central bank and the president himself. The second initiative is to help hotels, companies, cruises and all tourism establishments to finance the maintenance of their facilities during the slowdown, to be able to continue operations and receive visitors when tourism recovers. This support is funded by offering loans at just 8% interest rates.
But it's not all doom and gloom for the industry. The last few months have seen a relative improvement in inbound tourism. Government figures show 3.5 million tourists visited Egypt in the first 6 months of 2021. It's the same amount of tourists that visited in the whole of the pandemic hit 2020. And hotel occupancy rates doubled to 45% in the first half of 2021, from an average 23% the year before. This is owed to the government's successful strategy to tap new markets in Eastern Europe that have no travel restrictions. Officials have also fully vaccinated workers in the main tourism resort cities.
What we've been doing in the past few months is to ensure that the health and safety and regulations that we are following in the hotel establishments ensures the safety and the health and safety of the travelers. So once this becomes known to the travelers, they would feel that they are trusting the destination, and that's why we've been receiving big numbers of tourists during the past months.
Analysts believe the third quarter could see a breakthrough for the tourism and travel industry.
In October, November and December, there will be a lot of movement in tourism from our main markets, which is the European Union, Russia and Ukraine. We expect higher numbers next winter because of the gradual overall improvement globally. The vaccines rollout worldwide, vaccinations in Egypt and the considerable drop in COVID cases in Egypt. What makes Egypt attractive in winter is that resort cities have warm weather, suitable to enjoy beaches, cultural tourism and everything related to tourism.
The government is forecasting 2021 revenue to exceed $6 billion. That's nearly double 2020, but still half the pre-pandemic level. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Away from the continent now, the US Federal Reserve has hinted that it would consider an early end to its bond buying program in an attempt to curb rising prices. In the latest minutes of its Monetary Policy Committee meetings, the Fed basically says that the recent inflation surge has been higher than it expected, but it also adds that the reason for the surge include supply bottlenecks, soaring consumer spending and some labor shortages as well. More monetary policy business, but this time from across the Pacific. China will increase financial support for a range of firms with a focus on SMEs. This was decided at a State Council executive meeting chaired by the Premier Li Keqiang on the 7th of July. The country will use a range of monetary tools, including cuts to the reserve ratio requirements for banks at appropriate times in order to try and mitigate the impact of commodity price hikes on company operations. China also plans to launch trials of the national trading of carbon emission rights among power generation firms later this month. On our story for you, also out of China, the country has announced plans to establish a recycling system in the country by 2025 as part of broader efforts to meet national carbon neutrality goals. Over 5 years, the country is looking forward to drastically lowering energy and water consumption levels by up to 16% per unit of GDP. The government is also pushing for a lot more efficient use of resources while increasing the amount of waste paper and scrap steel that is recycled across the country. The plan calls for groundbreaking innovations in tech dealing with plastic pollution, eco-packaging and battery recycling as well. That last part will be especially important as we get a lot more EVs on the road. I'll leave you there for the time being, but here's what's coming up at the top of the hour. We'll be going back to Nigeria to look at some key assumptions for its 2022 budget. $57 a barrel as far as price is concerned, but a much higher crude production target of 1.9 million barrels a day. In a world where COVID is still a problem, is that a realistic set of assumptions? We'll explore that live from Lagos at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Hannah.
Thanks for that, Robert. We'll see you in a bit. For now, let's take a short break and return. In our new series on the East African community, 21 years on, we start by focusing on Uganda's agricultural potential as well as the seamless transfer of goods across the region.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Well, countries in the East Africa region have benefited from the bloc's adoption of the customs union, which has aided in the seamless transfer of goods across the bloc. Despite the challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, trade in the region has remained vibrant compared to other regions on the continent. CGTN's Nick Mudimba has more in this report.
Namanga, Kenya's border with Tanzania. Business is on as usual. The tough COVID-19 times have changed how operations are conducted at the border. Trucks from Tanzania in a rush to deliver different foodstuffs at the biggest wholesale market in East Africa. A long journey for most drivers as the border clearance awaits.
Clearance is very seamless. It's good that these countries come together. We hope that soon we will just be using IDs and pass to the other countries. Another good thing is that business is currently going on and everyone benefits. The traders benefit, the drivers benefit, and truck owners also get something.
It's 4 a.m. and the Marikiti market in Kenya's capital Nairobi is full of life. This is where goods from East African countries are brought for sale to traders and wholesalers. And in the cover of darkness, operations are going on as usual. Trucks from Uganda, Tanzania and other East African countries are all here. The traders on the ground bracing the early morning cold with a hot cup of coffee to keep them going. Fresh goods like pineapples, carrots, onions and other foodstuffs, all from different East African countries and within Kenya, all ready for supply. But for the traders, it has been a tedious journey and the pandemic hasn't made things any better.
At the moment, as much as things are different compared to old days, the coronavirus pandemic slowed things down. At times, goods reach the border and there is traffic jam. If there is jam, the goods will arrive late.
By the time the sun rises, the market is going through final stages of the day's activity. Most of the goods are already en route to specific retail and consumer destinations. The ease of doing business and the pillars of the East African community conspicuously manifesting in this market, unity in diversity.
I am from Uganda and I work here in Nairobi. The East African community idea has helped us a lot because we are now one. Some time back, we used to have a difficult time, but these days, the border is open and there's ease of doing business.
We get our oranges from Tanga in Tanzania. These days, things are easier to move around the border, and these perishable goods don't go stale. Compared to previous years, it was very difficult. At the moment, clearance is very fast. The vehicles come in early in the market, which keeps the supply chain consistent.
The objectives of the EAC Customs Union include furthering the liberalization of intra-regional trade in goods, promoting production efficiency in the community, enhancing domestic, cross-border and foreign investment, and promoting economic development and industrial diversification. The reduction of red tapes and embargoes in doing business among the countries is actually a welcome move by so many traders and drivers. Right now, the only issue they're facing is the issue of vaccination and, of course, COVID-19 test results turnaround, which is affecting the perishable movable goods to the market. Nick Mudimba, CGTN at the Markiti Market, Nairobi, Kenya.
Trade experts in Uganda are urging regional leaders to harmonize agricultural standards in order to boost trade. Uganda has a surplus of agricultural produce, but exporting it to other countries is still a challenge because of differences in standards set by some of its neighbors. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
A bumper harvest in Uganda. These women are sorting cereals for the market. But supply is outstripping local demand. And the Ugandan president is concerned about crops going to waste.
Uganda now is a country of surpluses. Maize, where we produce 5 million tons per year, but consume only 1 million tons within Uganda. Milk, we produce 2.6 billion liters, but consume only 800 million liters.
And more produce is still coming to the market. Figures from Uganda's Bureau of Statistics show that 70% of Ugandans are involved in agriculture. Local authorities are urging farmers to produce more so that they can improve on their incomes. There are hopes that the surplus could be exported to other countries in the region. But ensuring all standards in all countries are met is still a challenge.
Products like maize sometimes get affected, get contaminated during transportation. Even when they meet standards at farm level and at packaging level, they sometimes get contaminated during transportation or even during storage as the trucks are waiting to be cleared on the border. That's where if you have a standards infrastructure across the border points.
Uganda recently had a standoff with her neighbor Kenya over the quality of maize imports. Kenya has since put in place tough conditions such as registration of CEO importers, certificate of conformity on aflatoxin levels, and details of warehouses. President Yoweri Museveni also wants African leaders to speed up the integration of markets on the continent.
We need to deal, along with our brothers and sisters in Africa, with 3 issues: regional and continental integration, to unite the regional and continental markets, to support production of goods and services better. Higher purchasing power in Uganda so that Ugandans can buy more. This is the answer for the markets. Number 3, and good quality products at comparative cost that can be accepted in national, regional, continental, and international markets.
Uganda has also decided to strengthen quality checks at all levels of production. But for now, to keep in business, these traders are processing the produce into long shelf life products as they wait for new markets. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Some sport news after the break. Here's what's coming up. Kenyan sprinter Ferdinand Omanyala out to make his name at Tokyo Olympics in Japan.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Well, the Tokyo 2020 Summer Games are only 15 days away, and Kenyan sprinter Ferdinand Omanyala's Olympic dream is almost here. The University of Nairobi Bachelor of Science in Pure Chemistry student began his journey to Tokyo 5 years ago. He became an instant local hero when he qualified for the Olympics in the 100 meters together with Mark Otieno. To Omanyala, the instant fame is not a distraction as he prepares to go into uncharted waters in Tokyo. Kenya is famed for middle and long distance runners who dominate races from the 800 meters to the marathon. But Omanyala, who is a former rugby player, is keen on making the nation's name in sprint.
My target at the Olympics is to handle each race as it comes, but my main aim is to break records. I pray that God gives me the strength to break records in every race that I run in the Olympics. Kenya is not known for sprints because it's been well known for the long and middle distance. But now we have already changed that, because if you see there's so much support coming through, and people are now believing that Kenyans can run. So I believe that me and Mark have already changed that notion. So it's just us to go and perfect this skill and show now the world that Kenya has sprinters.
Despite the global pandemic, South Africa, rugby is back in full swing. The country's 15s and 7s team are both in camp preparing for the upcoming British and Irish Lions tour, as well as Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Rio 2016 bronze winners Blitzbokke are now eyeing gold in Japan and will face African rivals Kenya in Pool C of the rugby's 7s competition. CGTN CSWC has that story.
All the attention of late has been on the much-anticipated Springboks and British and Irish Lions series, leaving all other rugby, including the South African Sevens team's Olympic preparations, to fly largely under the radar, until now that the draw for the event is out and the attention is back on the bronze medalists.
Yeah, I think we're obviously in a tough pool. I think with the likes of America, Kenya and Ireland, it's definitely not going to be an easy pool, but we also see it as a positive. I think we haven't played games in a long time, and hopefully if we can get through that pool, we feel like that will make us really battle hardened to go into that knockout stages.
Africa's two top sevens teams, the Blitzboks and the Shujaa, will clash in a hotly contested Pool C encounter, which Powell admits is an opportunity both teams are relishing.
They will get themselves up for that game. We had the opportunity to play them, luckily, in that Solidarity Sevens a few weeks ago, and happy with what we got out of those games. So, but again, they can come out in that game in the Olympics and throw everything at us. So, I think if you're not going to be ready and if you're not going to be focused on that game, they're also one of those teams that can make you pay on the day.
After claiming bronze in Rio de Janeiro, the Blitzboks are eager to ascend to the top step of the podium in Tokyo, and it is an objective Powell believes his former World Series champions can achieve.
We had a discussion with the players, and I think we all said, listen, our goal must be realistic and it must be achievable. And I think everybody in that group said that's what they want to go for, and that's the goal. And I think, again, we've obviously had a few ups and downs in the last season where we only had 6 tournaments. But again, the times that we played well, the guys showed what they're capable of and that they are capable of beating any team. So I think it is realistic for us to go for that gold medal.
Rugby fans are in for a real treat during the South African winters. The world champions take on the pride of the United Kingdom and Ireland in a mouth-watering series, while the Springboks Sevens team head to Tokyo with their focus on returning with coveted Olympic gold. It's a rugby bonanza to behold, and one that goes a long way to make up for a barren time without much rugby for the men in green and gold. CSWC, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
We cross over to Japan, where Prime Minister